The Early Excellence Baseline assessment is, because it's done through observations and interactions with the children, which is why we love it. It allows us to spend time with our children, getting to know them, settling them into school. You would never ever get that from a test, nothing at all. It's really pragmatic. It gives us a clear picture of where our starting point needs to be to do our planning for the children, which then allows us to set up our areas, think about the next steps for the children. The Leuven scales was a big thing for us, that it really, really made us focus on those children.
The choice of a baseline assessment was really important for me for two main reasons. First of all, it had to fit in with early years pedagogy, a pedagogy that we hold really firmly at this school. And secondly, I also have to report to outside agencies and talk about progress. So it had to be something that was really rigorous with its data and showed progress really well.
As an Ofsted inspector, both of schools and early years settings, an outstanding judgement on a setting or a school would focus around the characteristics of effective learning. Obviously, because they give us the skills base for children's activities. The early excellence model is very, very effective, and that focus on the characteristics of effective learning will give practitioners, head teachers and schools the information base they need to make an outstanding judgement at Ofsted.
So we're delighted that the DfE have accredited the Early Excellence Baseline, EExBA, because it gives schools, it gives practitioners a real choice. From what we know, lots of the other providers are going down a very formal route of testing, using preset tests, using electronic devices. And the Early Excellence Baseline is very different. It allows schools and practitioners to choose a very principled approach that fits in with how they work in the early years, that is underpinned by their knowledge and that professionalism that they bring to knowing children, settling children in, and finding out what children, their competencies, because it's about the unique child. It's about really getting to know what a child can do on entry reception. And so the EExBA, the Early Excellence Baseline, allows practitioners to use all of that information and record it in a format that provides the data for the DfE and underpins accountability in schools.
EExBA is a practitioner-led assessment, and the reason that makes it unique is there's no tests involved, there are no specific tasks involved. It comes from what we consider the rich vein of knowledge that practitioners have about the children. So through observation, through interaction, through talking to their parents, through setting up interactive questioning, the teachers glean the information they need to make a valid and reliable and accurate assessment of where those children are as they start in a reception class. That the things that really matter for long-term learning manifest themselves in reception children in particular ways. So for instance, one of the things we will look at is characteristics of effective learning. Now yes, that is part of the EYFS, but also it's a critical set of behaviours that lifelong learners need to develop. The essential aspects of EExBA is that it doesn't involve testing children. There's often a debate in the early years community and in the assessment community about how we get accurate information. And there is a school of thought that says we can test children by giving them set questions and set activities that will give us the information we need. We strongly challenge that, both in terms of whether or not that's ethical, but also in a more hard-nosed way, whether that gives you reliable and accurate information. And what we've seen about the commercial products around there which test young children, giving them preset computer tasks and so on, is the information it gives you isn't usable and doesn't actually reflect the individuality of that child. One of the key principles of EYFS is the unique learner. And we were really keen that any assessment you do, baseline or at any point, fully reflects the nature of that child. The way that EExBA works is to identify an accurate point of assessment. If you assess children on entry to the first day of reception as they're coming in through the door, you're unlikely to get an accurate picture. But equally, if you wait till the end of the first half term, the autumn half term, end of October, and you assess children then, you're effectively saying they haven't made any development in that time. And we know that's not true. So there is a real dilemma actually here on how you make that an accurate baseline, an accurate assessment of where they are on entry. So the way we've approached that is to use the internationally recognised scales for wellbeing involvement developed by Lomas, the Lomas scales. And what they do is to identify when children have high levels of wellbeing and involvement. That's the point at which we then undertake the remainder of the assessment. And the remainder of the assessment consists of looking at judgments against the characteristics of effective learning and also the areas of learning and development, the prime areas, plus literacy, plus mathematics. So the practitioners, using their knowledge of the child, observing them, talking to their parents, looking at previous records, getting that rounded three-dimensional picture, make judgments against a series of statements which are backed up by exemplification. And the judgment, as prescribed by the DfE, has to be a binary judgment, which means it's a yes or no. Do they demonstrate this behaviour? Yes or no. Do they know this? Yes or no. Have they demonstrated this skill? Yes or no. From that, the teachers record their judgments and the assessment is completed. EExBA will be part of a much wider process that early excellence are developing to support schools and settings in recording and demonstrating progress, real assessment, and being accountable for things that matter. One of the things we are currently doing is developing EExBA N, which is a baseline assessment on entry that works on the same principles but for entry to nursery. So that schools with nursery units attached or nursery schools can use both of those to look at progress and development right across the EYFS. What we're also doing is developing an approach to tracking and demonstrating progress from 2 to the end of EYFS, so that settings that have a range of children's ages can look at how they will demonstrate progress both within age-related expectations but also the critical attributes of characteristics of effective learning and wellbeing and involvement, to look at how that progresses over time and the impact that has on children in their setting.
The nature of the way in which the DfE have chosen their baselines gives schools choice. But the fact that early excellence have a baseline within that accredited list gives schools a real choice. A choice between choosing a principled approach that meets the DfE requirements or choosing a task test-based approach. And that says something about what you believe about children. It says something about what schools believe about their children and their families and what they want. And this is the start. It's the start of the children coming into school, settling into school, and let's do it right. Let's make the right choice.